William over Bill?
Bill is fine.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
All right.
So
what we'll do is I'll just say, and welcome to the show, Bill, and we'll go from there.
All right.
All right. Awesome. Give me a second. I'll break here so I can edit it. And let me get rid of Facebook so that doesn't ding like that.
Oh, yeah, I should do that too. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to start and something went ding. I'm like, all right, you ready, Jen?
Okay. Yep, I'm
ready, Bill?
Yeah.
Yay, so excited.
So, welcome to the show, Bill Hall. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really an honor to have you on the show. We are really excited to talk about the book that you wrote and your paranormal experience and also your life experience.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Bill,
go ahead, Jen.
Okay. You know, what initially drew you to the case, the Bridgeport? What initially drew you to the Bridgeport Poltergeist case?
Well, I grew up in Bridgeport, so I heard about it for many years. Never really looked into it, but I heard about it. I was performing magic at the time, quite a lot of shows, and I got asked about it quite often, but I never looked into it and never really bothered devoting much time to it. I just figured it was whatever, and I wasn't really that interested. And then one day, many, many years later, I saw a post on Facebook, who remembers the haunted house on Lindley Street, with a picture of the little house. And I remembered, boy, I've been asked questions about that for so many years. So now, of course, with the internet, in those days, I had, the old fashioned research. Now with the internet, I Googled and read some of the newspaper articles and saw what the police officers and the firefighters were saying. And when I started reading all the quotes from them, it sounded like there was something maybe to this story, at least that it would be fast, even if it turned out to be a hoax, being the magician and skeptic that I was. Or still am, I'm an open-minded skeptic, which I believe we all should be, really,
Yeah.
Sometimes you just know, obviously, and, other times, like with photos, it's, crazy with misinterpretation. Not so much fraud outright. I see mostly good people just misinterpreting things, and, and we're all guilty of that. I mean, you can be in a haunted place and have regular photo phenomena occur, like a lens flare or something, and that doesn't mean the place isn't haunted. It just means you were fooled by the photo in the place that was haunted,
Right.
Anyhow, I probably got a little sidetracked, but that's
no, we love that.
That's how I came about with Lindley Street, is seeing that, and then I read that there was an investigation, and I said, "Wow, investigation!" I said, "If so," then I started calling people, just started dialing, and a lot of them were deceased, unfortunately. But then I reached the first responding police officer, Joseph Tomic, and he told me that they were forced to be interviewed. And I'm thinking to myself, forced to be interviewed? And he's like, yeah, that was after it was declared a hoax, and so he was telling me it wasn't a hoax. And he told me, if you can find the investigators, he says they did lots of interviews, tapes and tapes. And so, I'm like, oh my goodness. So I ended up finding in the newspaper the name Boy Spady, and I tracked him down, and I met with him, and he was a wonderful gent. And he said, here, tell the story, and, gave me all the stuff.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a once in a lifetime type of opportunity for somebody.
Oh, yeah. It was
into the keys to the kingdom, right?
Yeah, it was a rabbit hole. I'm so glad I went down. And 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 Boyce had written a little bit about it from the viewpoint within the psychic research circles, but not to the general public. So, and I made it a point to do some lectures with him, after the book about the case came out. And I also made it a point to, he was at the book launch, so I had him come up and
Nice.
everybody
That's awesome.
smiled over, and he remembered Paulino, who was there. He instantly remembered Paul. I'll tell you, his memory was quite fascinating. It was better than mine for the years I was working closely with them. So,
what I found interesting about the case was that there was so many people in the house at the time, from the initial call, that witnessed things levitating and moving.
Especially refrigerator. I mean, come on.
Right. And a lot of times there were multiple things happening at once in different rooms, and but that is what's really fascinating about this case. It's really the first time, at least in recent times, where you have the case where you have documentation from multiple people seeing the same incident and all interviewed separately. And each one had an incident sheet to go with it, as well as the audio. So it was to have that kind of cross-referencing is it's almost better than me being there, because if I'm and I see something, I say, "Oh, Bill, maybe it's you," or maybe you're seeing something. But obviously, when you have other people, they're all seeing the same thing you're seeing. Now you have something to talk about.
Right. What I thought was fascinating was that, it wasn't just one police officer went in and something happened. You had who else was in there? Was there EMS and firefighters at the house?
The way it escalated was the off-duty police officer goes in there and sees the furniture opening and closing and the TV floating, and he calls it in. And two police officers show up, and they go in and see all this stuff, and they called two more show up, and basically the police don't really know what to do, so they end up calling the fire department to come check out the house. So the fire department comes and they check for sand on the windowsills and things like that, and they can't find anything. And the fire department called the priest. So it was escalating like police, more police, then fire department, then priest, then media, so
like all everybody.
It basically escalated like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There was an injury. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There was an injury there where Laura, the lady that the house, was taken to the hospital, but I don't know if she was taken by ambulance or not, but that might be what you're referring to.
Yeah, was it her ankle that you had
her toe? Yeah.
Something dropped on it. Was it the refrigerator or was it a
TV.
Television? TV.
Yeah, it was the television, in the kitchen. They had a lot of TVs for a family in the 70s to begin with, and then after theirs started to break, they ended up borrowing TV from the neighbor. Could you imagine that? Hey, Tom, you heard about this haunted house on, that's ours, of course. You heard about it on the news, and all our TVs float, stuff like that. Well, you mind if we borrow one of your TVs? All of ours are broken.
And the TVs in the 70s were heavy. I remember we had big giant TVs, and they were in wooden cabinets, or they were big bubble TVs.
Yeah, these were smaller, but they're still heavy. But they're still heavy because they all have that solid wood around them. Yeah.
Definitely. For an entity to be able to pick up something that that is a massive amount of energy. And for, normally with the poltergeist case, and tell me if you experienced or heard this. It's a few things here or there. It's not like an ongoing thing where more people come and then more activity happens. It's usually there's like one incident, a door
Mhm.
slams or
Or
something
the
flies off
cover.
the shelf. This was multiple incidents
Mhm.
that people witnessed.
Yes, although not, unheard of with poltergeist cases, but this was an extremely um, intense one. And like you pointed out, I mean, and it's normally not the case where more people show up and you still have activity.
Right.
Normally the activity dies down for quite
Mhm.
some time. And it's not that there was constant, activity. There, of course, were, lulls, just like in any reality of these cases. But the the people that were there um, definitely saw those things happen, and they were pretty intense. The picking up and throwing the little girl was really one of those unbelievable kind of
Mhm.
moments. And there was just a lot of people. There was about 10, 11 witnesses to that, police officers and other family and friends. I mean, just um, it
Was
was, you listen to all the firsthand witnesses, that something unexplained happened there.
Mhm.
Besides that it's a poltergeist, but then of course the jury's out on what exactly we're talking about. But
Yeah. Now, was that just the little girl that was thrown? Was that the Marsha? Was that
yes,
Marsha?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
Mars, they call her, yeah.
And
did she
most of
have
the
any
activity only
injuries?
happened when she was there?
No, no, I did analyze that and
Okay.
put it in the book because that was a question that I had. Was
Mhm.
activity, real or not, and knowing it was real, but still a valid question. Was a lot of it around, and it was really about 50-50, or
Okay.
it might have been less than that. And I did that for the two reasons. One, for those of us that believe and know that it's a real case, it's still an
Mhm.
interesting question, like that you posed. And then it's also a good thing to do for those that say, the kid did it, or, whatever. You
Yeah.
say, yeah, she wasn't there for a lot of it. So, we
Okay.
know that, you know, even if you throw all this other stuff out and said, oh, well, she was in the house, so you can't count it. Well, then what about all this other stuff?
Yeah.
So,
Do they know if anything happened prior to that family moving in that house?
from my research, I would say most likely not. There's nothing public that we know of. Bob Crane at one time lived in that
Oh.
Oh.
little, yeah, when he was a DJ.
Mhm. Did
Yeah,
he experience anything?
not that I know of. No,
Mm.
although some would say he was evil enough that maybe
Yeah.
he's the reason it started.
Yeah. I was just thinking that.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that
So
started to be an additional theory once I told people that he lived there.
yeah, that's
Probably,
interesting, huh?
and you
Um,
can't really dispute that one. You can say, well, yeah,
No.
wouldn't exactly
right.
have to the density there.
Yeah.
So,
Was there any particularly surprising or unexpected findings you came across in your research for your book?
I think the way the family acted, the things they did, their resilience, but all of those things, especially just the way they handled it, was very much not like you would see portrayed in a horror movie. It was very
Mhm.
real life. It was very like, and some people would say, well, why did they stay in the house? Well, they often didn't stay in the house. Sometimes they stayed with family, or sometimes they would just have Marcy stay with Theon or something, because for them to stay too, remember, it's a burden for them to be over somebody's house.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So they were doing some of that, during that time. And they even had a routine where Jerry, when they came home, Jerry would go in the house first to check out the house before Laura and Marcy came in. So I mean, that to me, even though, I can go into the phenomena part of what was fascinating, but I think
Mhm.
just those kinds of details to it was fascinating for me to see the way that they, plotted through this messy situation.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And what was the timeline from when it started until it got really bad? Was it like 0 to 60, or was this like a slow progression of things building up?
Uh, the intense part of it was very short. Was basically like a Thursday to a Tuesday, really, if you want to be.
Okay.
And it went beyond that, but it was more subdued um, until about January. So I'd say probably maybe a month. Uh, but the tense part was that basically a weekend, or how
Okay.
weekend I called it. But it
Yeah.
started in 1971. It became public in 1974. In 1971, it started with the knocking sounds on the inside
Mm.
and the outsides of the walls, and it would follow them as they walked room to room.
Oh,
Oh my
Drove
gosh.
crazy. They called the police, and again, the police called the fire department. Nobody called the police, not in this case. But they ruled out construction. They ruled out the ground. They ruled out everything. Um, Jerry took pipe apart, thinking maybe an animal was making noises or something. I don't know. They were
Yeah.
desperate, but they couldn't find. They even recorded the sounds, and then that was recorded by their police officer friend across the street, who gave the tape to Ed Warren, and Ed gave it to Boyce Beatty, and Boyce gave it to me. So, we got to hear the poltergeist sounds.
Wow. And how did you feel when you first heard those sounds? What was your gut reaction?
My gut reaction, it was pretty freaky. It was. I don't think it would have been as impressive if I hadn't already listened to the amount of interviews I did. So I knew the case was real when I heard them. If I didn't, then I couldn't tell you what I would have thought of them. But hearing it, knowing the case is real, and hearing those sounds, yeah, they were pretty weird. It was it struck me as not scary, but as definitely as fascinating.
And
Maybe I would have been scared if I was in the house. I don't want to play like I'm some brave person, but
I know my house is haunted, so like, knocks and bangs and shadow figures and apparitions. I have the whole gamut here. So like if you see something walk behind me, just ignore it. Happens all the time. But
what were the
it's
about it. They're running.
yeah? So what were the sounds? I mean, were
yeah,
they
what
voices or were they growls or
No, they were like a banging sound.
okay?
And they said, and it was, I couldn't really compare it to anything. I mean, you can say that they were normal or abnormal. You can argue either side, but they didn't sound like anything obvious to me.
did it keep you up at night at all, or did you feel like different after you heard those?
No, Lindley Street didn't keep me up. I was fascinated by it. I did have some computer trouble during it, which I didn't talk about at first because it just sounded so silly.
Mhm.
Um, I think we were talking about this before off air, but that when you hear. Matter of fact, I heard on the tapes that Boyce had some trouble when he was doing interviews. He had a thing that had erased, and he was very annoyed by it. He made a comment about it on the tape, explaining exactly what he did, and he knows it would, In other words, he knows it wasn't him, or doing it with the tape. And the first thing when I heard that is, I'm like, oh geez, boys, you're doing such a great job in this investigation. What are you doing with this? Blaming the poltergeist on the tape thing. And then I started having problems. People who were doing transcriptions were having problems. It was really crazy. So maybe there's something to it, but and I hear from all my compeers and comrades that there is. But yeah, I did experience that with Lindley Street, but I wasn't scared of it. But I did have people who were transcribing it, that once they transcribed a certain amount, they quit.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's
They didn't
interesting.
want anything to do with it. Yeah. And not necessarily outside the US too. I'm talking about, United
Yeah,
States based, transcribers.
interesting. Yeah, like when we podcast, we've spoken to many people in many different cases. We've experienced things through the taping a
Yeah.
podcast. Files disappear. We've captured EVPs during our podcast that our listeners
Oh,
have
wow.
shared.
Mhm.
We've had Ave Maria just play out of the blue. So it's like, we
Oh,
talk
that's
about some of these
wild.
different cases and like things we always wonder, is maybe the spirits or of that particular case or ghost haunting listening to us. I don't know. Strange things happen when you're
Well,
podcasting.
yeah, I mean, the good example of that is the Greenbrier ghost. We were talking about that. That's a woman that was killed, and she actually proved her case in a court of law by giving dreams to her mother.
After
And
she
as
died.
we were talking about that, we heard a woman screaming on our recording. So
Yeah.
maybe she was listening. Who knows?
Yeah, that stuff's fascinating. And that gets into the whole time slip thing too.
Yeah.
Are they dead, or is it
Mhm.
a time slip thing? Uh, but that's a fascinating case. The dream connection is fascinating.
Mhm.
Like the living haunting the living
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
where one's dreaming and the other is having their house haunted, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
And
other's
that,
haunted.
Right.
that's
It's
one
so
thing I
interesting.
definitely want to bring up with you about the like phone calls from the dead and stuff like that. But before we leave the poltergeist case, I think it's important that we talk about Sam the cat. What
Oh,
is up with this? On my notes here, it says the talking cat. What is up with that?
yes. Well, yeah, and at one point there was reporters with their microphones held up to the kitten saying, say something for us, say something for. Um, well, some would swear the cat talked. Jerry swore the cat talked from the basement. Um, he didn't see the cat talk.
Mhm.
He heard the voices.
Yeah.
Uh, the cat also had an operation, so it was making strange noises.
Oh,
And
okay.
and then
Poor
the
kitty.
third thing, so we have three things going on. And the third thing is there was audio phenomena there. So I think the kitten got blamed for it, being in the basement,
Poor
kind of,
kitty.
because they used to sometimes put the kitten in the basement, so I don't know, separate him from the dog, or I don't know.
Okay.
But so there was those three things going on. And then there also was there was a fourth thing too, where one of the police officers wanted to, two of the police officers wanted to play a joke. So they said, hey, Marcy, pretend the cat knows his brother's name, Joe, and so Marcy played along with it, and the police officer was shocked, and they never told the guy. They never
Yeah.
told the guy they were joking too.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
I mean, what better tool to use than to take a cat to a paranormal investigation, you know?
Right?
Oh boy.
That's
So
interesting.
so I don't know about. I don't think the kitten actually talked. There was audio phenomena. There was one point where Bob Pantano from WNAB Radio could have swore the cat said help when Marcy flew across the room and bumped her head. But then again, if you're looking at the kitten and you hear that noise, again, I think it's more of like a proximate effect. It's the cat's there and you hear the noise over there, then you say the cat's talking. I mean, that would be it, but I wouldn't believe the cat actually. Others disagree with me and say it was demonic, whatever, but I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, if something has enough power to move furniture and stuff, it probably has enough power to manipulate the recordings and stuff.
Well, that's a good point. But I mean, this was live. They heard those things. Yeah. But definitely what you're saying about the recordings. I know there was Boyce captured a few things happening on tape when he was, in the middle of doing some interviews with the family, and there was this weird like buzzing noise, like a zzz, like a weird noise, and then the furniture would topple over or something, and so that was fascinating.
Yeah, that kind of makes me wonder about, we don't understand how this phenomenon works. The poltergeist works, where they can actually move furniture and all that, because you think of a spirit, the amount of energy that would take. But that brings up a good point of like hearing electronic sounds. Maybe it's just so much magnetism or magnetoelectricity, I guess that's a word, in the air, that it could pick up something like static or something. Maybe that's how
electromagnetic frequencies, I think. The EMFs. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that's what we're talking about. I think we're talking about, yes, definitely some of that activity was definitely consciously negatively directed towards Marcy and the family. But then there's other things that happen that could just be a result of that overflow of energy.
Yeah.
Between, if you're going with the multiverse theory, you think it's like a parallel world intersect, then it's the crossing of those two worlds, if you will, and which is kind of a modern way of saying the veil's thin.
Yeah, basically, right?
You're right. So we shouldn't all argue, I guess, because no matter what your theory is, it's kind of a different way of saying close to the same thing. I find a lot of times, anyhow.
Yeah.
Now, are any of the family members still living? And have you talked to any of them?
No, they all were deceased when I started this project. Yeah. The father was the last one. Father died in the 90s. And Marcy died at age, I think, 52, I think it is. She died. I forget the year, but she was unfortunately deceased when we located her.
Was she adopted, or was she a natural child?
She was adopted by Laura and Jerry Gooden. So they adopted her, and it was after the adoption that they started to have some of that activity.
Was she Native American? Or am I getting that? Okay.
Yeah, she was. The one thing we did find out later on, she was a result of her mother had. She was a teen, result of a teen pregnancy. So she was one of, I believe, 5 children. So the original reservation and that kind of thing, that wasn't, or her being abused or anything like that. Some of those things that were that Laura said that they were told, none of those ended up being correct.
Okay. I just wondered if possibly something along the lines of, a Native American spirit could have been a part or the reason for the poltergeist. What do you think? Why do you think that particular house and that particular people or that particular time? I mean, what is your theory and how you feel about it?
Oh, sure. Well, I think it was the buildup of Marcy being picked on for a year at school and then being beat up at school, and all that time not being happy at home, not getting along well with the mother. The mother is very, very strict and limiting and smothering on Marcy because they had
Okay.
lost a small child that they had for at age 6. They lost their son. So they were really had this parenting style of almost like a prisoner, and
Yeah.
they meant well, but it wasn't very healthy for her, and she was shy to begin with and introverted, and so after a year of being picked on and living with the mother, and now she's beaten up at school, stuck there for 6 weeks, being homeschooled and stuck there with the mother. And it was right after that 6 week period that the whole thing exploded. So we know that that's kind of what built up that energy. What that missing ingredient is, of course, we're all looking for those answers. So we do know there's an underground spring under the house, which is
Oh,
interesting. It's
wow.
interesting.
Mm. That's interesting because you think that possibly, if you have a natural spring that's a water source, people will congregate to that, or, it could be a meeting place. It could be a place where, somebody passed,
Or just a con.
there could have been a settlement around there or under, that
Right, right.
particular land. It could be tied to land. It could have been, do you think, and don't take this the wrong way, but maybe it was the spirit of the young child that passed. Maybe it was jealous that they brought in another child.
Well, some people have theorized that, but I don't think so. It seems to be a pretty typical poltergeist case as far as the buildup and um, and that's why with poltergeist cases, I think it even has less to do with uh, the land or the house or the house itself, and more to do with the circumstances.
Oh, okay.
Um, at least from all the cases that we've seen that happen all different places, they're not part of otherwise hauntings usually. When they talk about a true poltergeist case.
Yeah.
And when the family moved from that house, did anything follow them or did anything remain in the house once they were gone?
Well, they stayed in that house. I mean, they tried to
Oh,
sell it and they couldn't, and so
oh,
they
okay.
ended up staying there. Yeah.
Oh,
So as far as we know, the activity stopped after Marcy got settled in school. Uh, the priest who came there and saw things himself, Father Doyle, he brokered a deal for them to get a grant so that they can afford to send Marcy to St. Patrick's School. And then the teachers were nice there, the students were nice there, and that's when the activity fizzled out. Just like it
wow.
always does in these cases, you have to break
Yeah.
that frequency. You got to break it, and that did it. Her getting back to school and back to a regular routine and in a nice environment, uh, and that's all it would take to get rid of that. But yeah, it was quite something in the meantime, right?
Yeah.
Did the priest do any cleansing or of the house or try to expunge anything?
There was a priest, Father Charbonneau, who came with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and
Okay.
Paulino was a young seminary student. Father Charbonneau did a blessing Um, but they didn't do what I would call, a cleansing or anything like that. And I don't know if Father Charbonneau might have did it more for the family too. He was an interesting character. He was in the National Enquirer talking.
Really?
Talking about
Oh my
Lindley
gosh.
Street. You can't believe it, and no one knew how he got away with what he got away with. But I guess
Yeah.
it depends who your boss is. But because he was highly decorated and did amazing things throughout his career. But I mean, he would give classes on the paranormal and just
That's amazing.
talk to any media who would about it,
Mhm.
and the other people who reported to, like Bishop McKenna and stuff. I think that was right at the time. They had to toe the party line and they couldn't do that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
Father Doyle, he never spoke like that. Father Doyle, he came to the house uh, early on and he was going to do a blessing, but his little holy water thing kept falling over every time he went for it.
Oh,
Over, yeah.
interesting.
And
Oh
after
my gosh.
3 times, he's like, "Oh," he put it away and he got in the house. So he's like, "You guys are on your own." No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he,
Now,
I
have
mean, he
you?
did a good job. He was instrumental in getting the family settled and getting um, rid of it.
Yeah. You ever been to the house or drove by the house?
I've been on the grounds to the house at the time. A little old lady lived there, and I didn't know. I thought it was unoccupied, so
Uh,
I scared the bejesus out of her.
oh, did she call the police on you? There's a man walking in my yard.
I'm there walking on the property or something. And, later on, I heard from a neighbor that because she only spoke Portuguese,
Okay.
that she thought I wanted to rob the place.
Oh,
Oh yeah, no. Worse, I'm writing a book about your house.
Yeah.
right.
Now everybody knows about it. Yeah.
That's interesting. So can we switch gears a little bit because I'm
Sure.
really fascinated about your 25 years of magic. I'm actually working on a book about affirmations, manifestation, and magic, which maybe next year will come out. But I'm
Oh wow.
fascinated about magic, the history of magic. What is magic? What called you to become a magician?
I wanted to do real magic.
Yeah.
I think
Yay, I love
all
it.
of us
I love
kids
it.
want to. I saw a magician do miracles, and I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all it took. And I think that's, and some people see it and say, I want to, if somebody else is doing something like that, I want to see it again.
Mhm.
Right. Other people say, oh, that was all right. And other people say, no, I got to do that. Well, I was that guy. And I forced my dad to drive me to the magic shop every week and convince him that I would do anything in the world if he just bought me this miracle.
How fun. That's so
And
exciting.
he would keep reminding me that the miracle doesn't work itself. You got to actually practice it. And I'm like, yeah. Just buy the miracle. And then I'd get home and I'm like, oh, come on. That's not what the guy did at the shop. But of course it was. It's just that you got to,
Yeah.
it's not, you got to make the magic happen. But no, I wanted to do real magic. And I grew up watching all those shows In Search of, and as
Yes.
a lot of us did. So, I was, fascinating. I had a lot of wonder in me. And I think, and then I like the entertainment part of it, the making people happy and experience that kind of wonder. So yeah, I enjoyed that a lot, and I was shy as a child too. So magic is a kind of it's an art that, believe it or not, is pretty good for people who are shy, and a lot of magicians were, at least in the past. Maybe it's not true today, especially with the internet and stuff. but used to be very shy. David Copperfield actually used to be incredibly shy, and in fact, if you look at his early interviews, they're incredibly um, scripted and very, you can't get
Right.
he can't go off the mark, at all.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, you see him, and of course, it's night and day. Now he's the master of it. He's done how many hundreds and hundreds.
Oh yeah.
But he grew up that way too, of being shy. Harry Houdini was also shy as a child. So a lot of it's a good art for somebody who's going to be alone for a lot of times, because you got to practice the same stupid thing over and over till you can
Right.
the coin from falling on the ground,
Yeah.
making that clanking noise, that keeps
Right.
it away.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's the story.
Yeah, we can
No.
relate with that because me and Jen are such introverts. I mean, we went to a
100%.
podcast convention, and the whole idea of this podcast convention is they force you to get out of being an introvert. And here we are sitting in the corner over there, and people are coming up. You guys introverts? We're like, yeah, but you could put us on stage in front of 1,000 people, and we just blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But it's because it's different. It's not
right.
like one.
Yeah.
So we can relate.
Right. It's very different, and that really was magic for me, and I think a lot of people. It was a way to communicate with many people when it was difficult, when it was more one-on-one. But if it was an auditorium, I can actually, I can make all these people laugh or something, or I can make all these people happy. That's, that's pretty cool. And that feels even more comfortable than going to try to ask that girl out over there. Forget it.
I know, like, I hate small talk. I get in a room and I'm like panicky, but like, put me on the podcast and talk about magic for 2 hours straight, and it never stops, right?
Right, yeah.
Or ghost story or anything along those lines.
You just got to ask, do you like the paranormal? And if they say no, say, well, I might as well go talk to somebody else. No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to talk about ghosts? And people are like, no. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. So much fun though. When you were learning magic, were you, I don't know how to say this. I mean, what fascinated about you? Like, did you ever I don't know, feel like there was more to the act? I want to say I guess the best word is was there a paranormal aspect to it, or was it just sleight of hand, or is it more of a lifestyle, or I don't know. It just fascinates. Everything about it fascinates me. I just wonder what appealed to you about it. Maybe is my question.
Well, I knew it was. To me, it was all fake. I was open to things like haunted houses or whatever, but I never experienced it myself. And certain things I wasn't open to. I'm less open to them now, today too. It's not because I'm closed-minded. It's just through many, many years of being through it. And that's psychokinesis is not the theory. And, some people will argue that that's part of what's involved in a poltergeist case. But I'm talking about moving objects with your mind. I've never seen any case where it wasn't fakery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that really fascinates me is people that can do stuff like that, move stuff with their mind and all that. And I remember seeing a video of a guy that he was supposed to be a shaman of some sort, and he's trained through like jujitsu and that kind of stuff, like that aspect of it. And he was moving things with his hands. And then when they tried to get him to do it again, he couldn't do it. But they actually had like powder and stuff down. So it wasn't wind or nothing. It was just energy. And we see that even with like Reiki, it's hands-on energy healing. So it's kind of makes you think, do they have that energy power to them?
Yeah, I've never experienced anything but people faking it. Not, I mean, I believe in Reiki. I'm not saying that's
Yeah.
fake.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's very different than what I was talking
Okay.
about.
All right. Yeah.
Did you travel when you were doing this, or were you local?
Pretty local. Traveled a little, but most of my shows were local. I'd travel a little if they were big shows, and then a fun thing would be me and a buddy of mine. Um, we'd go to New Hampshire because he ended up moving to New Hampshire, and we'd go to New Hampshire, and we would. Well, I don't know if we rented it or if they let us have it. I mean, it was ridiculously cheap. They let us have their whole auditorium,
Oh my gosh.
in the school. And it would be I know he lived in Monroe, New Hampshire, and I forget which, maybe it's Cambridge or something. I don't know. It's a small town still, though. And they're like dying for stuff to do. So we would go there and we'd rent that. And then we'd put up those posters, like the old fashioned carnival posters,
Yes.
We'd put them on all the things. We'd be on the radio. We'd be in the newspaper. I mean, we were like huge news because nothing was going there at all, And we'd go there and the place would be packed. And he used to have me laughing because I decided, I said, do you want to go first, me? So he said, oh, I'll go. So he goes, and I go up to do my show after intermission, and he's out there hawking popcorn, and I'm trying to do my show and trying not to laugh my butt off because he's got this shirt on that's like red and white striped, and I'm like, he didn't discuss any of this with me, and here I am,
my gosh.
and I'm like,
That's hilarious.
I'm trying to keep my wits about him, and meanwhile I'm looking. I'm like, wow, he sold another one. Huh? I had to quickly get my head back on that one.
Yeah, I just think it's fascinating.
That was a lot of fun because we would do those shows and we would make a lot of money, and then we'd have a few people helping us out with lights and stuff. So we'd all go out to dinner and stuff, and it would be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, theaters are. Many times we heard every theater is haunted. There's some kind of activity in theaters. And we always say because there's so much energy from the audience and the performers, and just it's great. I mean, we've been in a lot of theaters, and we've always had activity. I just
really,
it's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, I hear a lot about them, but I didn't know it was so. As prevalent as that, but that would make sense.
It's like one of the places here in town, the Collingwood Arts Center. Whenever there's a convention or that, the activity ramps up. And we've seen so much stuff that we can't explain during the performances.
Wow.
Yeah.
Real quick, who is the famous magician? Was it Harry Blackstone Jr.?
He was, both of them were famous. Yeah.
They performed in a theater in Ohio, in one of the counties in Ohio. It's in my book, but I can't remember the county or the name of the theater. But they appear in the theater sometimes. Their spirit, their ghost. People say they see them and hear them. I'll have to look that up and I'll send it to you.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Do you know?
I wrote the book.
Do you know his last words? His last words. He was during a rehearsal, and he falls and he's on his back, and a few people run over to him, and they say, "Harry, are you okay?" And he goes, "I make a living." So an old joke was, that's the honest to goodness story of his last words. So that's the way he was,
Yeah. Performer.
Nice guy. Yeah.
Joe's last words will be like, "Put the podcast down. Get the podcast down.
Upload.
Don't forget the show notes.
Right.
Hit record.
Hit record."
Yeah.
People ask me my advice of, I'm starting a podcast. What's the best advice you can give me? And I'm like, always hit record, because we've not hit record a few times.
That's just right. Right.
Yeah.
It's those basics that, boy, you kick yourself on. But.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to just touch also on one of your other books, The Phantom Messages.
Yeah.
I think is absolutely fascinating. Joe and I have done a lot of research on phantom phone calls, phantom messages. Tell us a little bit about the book and what you found in some of these stories.
Well, what we tried to do is to look at this phenomena across the paranormal, because we know sometimes there's hauntings that have messages, communication, of course, and other times there was phenomena where there was no haunting. It was just the phantom messages. And so we wanted to concentrate on, and by we, I mean myself and Jimmy Patanito, my co-author, Mr. Haunted. We wanted to concentrate on cases where it was unwanted communication. It wasn't like there was a haunting and I came in and I had my latest new thing I got in the mail and I'm going to capture something. Mm-hmm. And I'm not making fun of anybody, because it's probably would be me. I'll do something new and that'll be me. Yeah. But, but we wanted to, and we thought that those were cool and they had their place, but we wanted to concentrate on the communications that were just out of left field, not by people who were investigating this stuff, not by people who had a haunted house problem already, although we did include some cases where there was other haunting activity going on, just because we thought the phantom messages themselves were pretty cool. But we tried to concentrate on the cases where it was the unwanted, unexpected communication. Mm-hmm. We thought that was really the fascinating part of it, is when suddenly you're getting a call from, your mother who's passed on, and she's calling every day at the same time for 2 years. I mean, those kind of things are fascinating.
Interesting, like we've had cases where people got a phone call and the person just says, "I love you," and hang up, and then they find out they had passed an hour before that phone call came through. It's amazing. I heard my dad's voice one time after he passed on the phone. I just picked it up and I was like, "Hello," and he's like, said something I can't remember. I was so shocked. It was like one word, and I'm like, "They really just experience that?" That's so crazy.
And you could feel it, right? Like it's different. You could feel it's real. Yeah, that's everybody describes that who's experienced it, that it's, it's one of those things that you just knew it wasn't, because you don't automatically expect to hear your father. You don't. Sure. You're not expecting that. It's not.
Right.
So when it comes, it really really hits you.
Yeah. Everybody expects, get the phone call and like, "It's Uncle Charlie. I passed away and I left the key to the safe in the third drawer of my dresser."
Right.
That doesn't happen. I wish it would, but it doesn't. It's always a lot of times, somebody just reaching out from the other side and
just to say they're okay.
Yeah, it's never that useful information. Like, where'd you leave the safe?
Yeah.
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 And it goes along with, like you said earlier, about time slips and stuff like that too.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with phantom messages, you get a lot of that, and then you wonder, are they predicting the future, or is it really just they're able to see it as the past? That would be the easiest. Like, then they're not so smart as we think.
It's
a time slip advantage.
Yeah, but it all goes along with that electronic thing, because you think about it, how could they call when they're spirit form, or even emails, or text messages, stuff like that? They're manipulating those electronics so that they can put the words in. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it happens even beyond electronics. We found even with paper and pen. Still, there was a case with a magic doodle board with that with the writing appearing that way. Um, but definitely, it would make sense to phone call, and you get the same kind of, in those cases. A lot of times, you get that noise of like that interference thing, and one party all they hear is the interference, and the other party is hearing this conversation, this other quote unquote thing talking to them. So or it could be a person that they know. So it does have that kind of frequency to it. And and it's hard to believe frequency doesn't play a major thing. I think it was Tesla that said, if you want to know the secret to the universe, think frequency, energy, and vibration.
Yeah.
So that would be the paranormal, right?
Right. Exactly.
It seems like it's lots of times it's that far away sound. It's like the person's not speaking like right into the phone. It's like a far away type sound.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, like they're in a tunnel, or they're speaking or or it's staticky. You hear that quite a lot. I think almost always. I'm trying to think if there's a time where somebody says, no, it's a nice clear connection. No, it's usually staticky too.
Yeah.
And you wonder why that is. Like, is the, sound trying to travel from a different dimension, and it's like going through water, like if you were and I were underwater and I was trying to yell at you, there's a shark, and you hear right. Like you
like
wonder
I
if
heard from Jen on the beach.
I know, like we were on a
sitting there
vacation last
snorkeling.
week, and I kept yelling at Joe, there's a shark. And there really was a shark.
I could hear this shark. I'm like, what's she saying?
Oh, geez.
There was actually two.
Now
they
we
were
know how
swimming
people
together.
die in the horror movies. See,
Yeah.
Because people are yelling shark, and they're like, what?
And the people on the beach are like, what? It's gonna eat me.
They're just little ones. Ain't gonna
big.
harm you.
It was a little one, yeah. But still. But no, you wonder, it's like how, they don't have a voice box. So like how are these messages going through the air? Is it infrasound, or is it what's the other thing you call it, Joe? I can't remember.
Like geomagnetic.
Like how does that happen? Because we've heard it. We've heard people speaking, and there's nobody there. Like clear audio in my ear, out loud. It wasn't in my head, So we're always fascinated. Like, how do the spirits speak?
I still think it's magnetic and electronic in a way, because you could have one person stand right next to you and they'll be like, no, I didn't hear nothing. And you can hear it clear as day,
Yeah. No, I think I would agree with that. It's fascinating too that sometimes it's not, people. It's best way to describe it is like things. I'll give you an example. The case of the 9/11 phone calls. This guy, he was receiving these phone calls. I think it was once a month at first, and it was clanging sounds. It was people in terror, wind, and he got this horrifying feeling by listening to it. Like it didn't sound like he was just listening to part of a horror movie or something. To him, it sounded like he was listening to a real event. And it lasted 3 minutes. and he was quite shaken up by it. And then he got the call again, and he recorded it, and he started letting some friends and stuff listening to it without saying anything, just saying, you got to listen to this call. And they responded the same way. They didn't take it as, oh, this is just, a stupid call,
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the ladies he played it for fainted. I mean, that's how much it impacted her.
Wow. That's crazy.
And then these calls got to every day. So he ends up getting rid of his cell phone, gets a different phone number. And everything's quiet until the morning of 9/11. About an hour before the tower goes down, he gets one last call, 3 minutes, same thing to the new phone, new number. And then, 9/11 happens, and he's like, oh my God.
Crazy.
So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he never got another call after that. That was
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you're describing that, I was thinking it was afterwards, but it was before.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like a premonition?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's wild.
I know I titled it Calls from the Future Predict 9/11. But who knows? Yeah. It's almost like, and then people are saying, yeah, but why and how would that be sent to him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the how is actually easier than the why. The how we could explain with any of the theories that we can't do the math to back up. But the why is like, why would you do it when it's something you couldn't prevent?
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is we hear about premonition dreams and premonition stuff all the time. And, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the media or go to the call 911 and say, there's going to be something happening. Like there's going to be a plane crash and this is going to happen. And then they're like, okay, you knew about it. So are you the one that caused it? So
right.
Afraid to do it.
Yeah. And what if you're not 100% right? I mean, geez, it could still be very alarming if you get premonitions. And even if you're 70-80% right, that would be quite startling to the average person, I would think.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of the people that we've talked to or had on the show or met at conventions say, I've never told anybody this, because they were just afraid of being, made fun of or rejected or, just labeled as crazy.
Yeah.
Some of these cases that we've heard are, it's things that are unbelievable, but these people feel in their heart or know that happened to them, whether it's a ghost sighting or an alien encounter, a Bigfoot encounter. It's interesting that they always, I never told anybody this, but they feel in a safe space to be able to share that.
Yeah.
Which is great. We love that.
Yeah. I found when that, I was surprised when that started happening, pleasantly surprised when that started happening, where people would feel comfortable. And I was especially happy that the magic community and my magic friends, they didn't make fun of it or anything. They actually were open-minded enough to read the book, and they don't behave like they get segmented out to be. I mean, a few do, obviously. I mean, I love the Amazing Randy, but I mean, he was never going to find it anyhow, because he was just too, he was so harsh. He could have been there through the most violent poltergeist case. And because things happen so fast and everything, he still would leave saying it was inconclusive. So, you get, he was too much the other way. But of course, we need people like that. But Houdini was more, Houdini was open-minded, but he was never attracting the right people.
Yeah. And that's, he's constantly trying to debunk stuff. And then you get people like the Fox sisters, who were clicking their toes and stuff, and it's like,
Right.
oh, come on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard for investigators, serious investigators like ourselves, when there are people who, like there was one case of a hotel in California where they had put things in the ceiling to make things move, or
Mhm.
I can't think of the word right now because it's late at
Yeah.
night. I'm tired. But it's hard to be taken seriously when people falsify
Mhm.
their evidence.
Oh yeah,
Hard for
definitely.
us to prove it to anybody, but
Yeah.
I don't have to prove it to anybody. I just want to experience it for myself and have the experience.
Mhm.
And that's okay for me. I don't have to have a photograph or a video or um I know what I've
Mhm.
experienced and what I've seen. I'm skeptical too. I'm very skeptical, but until it actually happens and you experience, it's like, well, okay, I'm
Yeah.
believing
No,
it.
you're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And I'm less interested in the photos.
Mhm.
Anyhow, I'd probably be more apt to believe what you're telling me than, some photo of whatever is supposed to be
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
probably both of us have wrong and is something else.
Right.
Well,
It
I
could
mean,
be.
I I actually teach a class. It's a one-night class at Owens about orbs and why you get orbs and how you get orbs and lens flare and stuff like that. But it's people. One person said to me one time, they're like, "Well, how how do you feel when you see an orb picture and people believe it's their grandma and you're telling them it's not? It's just because the lens is so close to the flash and all that, And I'm like, you know, you have to let them believe what they want. But if you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you the truth about why you get stuff like that. It's rolling shutter. That's a huge thing. People see a line and they think, oh, look, it's a plasma beam. I'm like, no, that's
Right. It's
rolling
a
shutter.
skeletal spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you say that because that's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
And
Cause I mean, you think about it, the flash and you're talking a lens that's the size of a ballpoint pen and tip. And then you have a super bright flash right next to it. And the way digital cameras work is it's a rolling shutter. So the one line opens and the next line, then the next line, and it rolls down the shutter. And it's like people see that all the time where they see um, an orb and there'll be a line and they're like, look, it's a plasma beam. I'm like, no, it's not.
my favorite is the plasma worm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if you heard that one,
Oh yeah.
That's interesting. But our time is come and gone. And Bill, we
Yeah.
really, really, really appreciate you being on the show and fascinating. We'd love to have you back and talk more about magic when we have more time. If you're interested, I'd like
Oh,
to
thank
pick your
you.
brain a little bit about magic, particularly magic.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Right,
But yeah,
yeah,
thank
so,
you so much.
we'll for the listeners, we will post all of the links to Bill's books in the show notes to be able to go
Mhm.
there. I believe they're on Amazon, correct, Bill?
Yeah.
You
Get 'em
could
from
just go
Amazon?
to you can go to my site and get signed books at
Yeah.
Oh, great.
halloftheparanormal.com. Yeah.
Oh, say
Mhm.
that one more time.
Hall of the Paranormal,
Yeah.
HALL of the
Okay, perfect.
paranormal.com.
Great, and we'll
Yeah.
put that link in the show notes so all the
Thank
listeners be able to go and get a signed copy of the book. That's exciting. I want one because I'm fascinated by this stuff. I love
Mhm.
it. I have stacks and stacks and stacks of paranormal books because I just love it.
Oh, me too.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, of course we do, right? I mean,
Yeah.
right. It's what we do.
it's what
But
we
no, we
do.
really appreciate you taking some time to come on the podcast, and hopefully our listeners will get out there buy the book. But really, we appreciate you being on and
Oh,
sharing your
thank you so
your
much.
research and magic with us. It was magic.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had a great time.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Okay. Let me stop the
We'll
recording
stop
here
recording.
Okay.
and I'll hit stop up here.